I was looking once again at your resume and thinking, how the hell are we going to get all this in? You've done too much. How did you get to where you are today?
I started at college. Like I wanted to go to college to learn art. I quickly got distracted and moved to New York. And then I really was motivated to start working. I had learned about styling from a friend of mine who was in London. I was obsessed with street culture and fashion, British street culture and fashion. And then it was just kind of one foot in front of the other blindly. I got really great advice from a very respected kind of iconic fashion photographer, Arthur Elgort,
Mm-hmm.
who I had the pleasure to meet during those days when in my very early 20s when I moved to New York. And he said, I can't do much for you. I'm established. Come up with your own people,
Oh,
like,
wow. Okay.
find like-minded people and come up with your friends.
Yeah.
And that
Totally.
was really, really a guiding
Mm-hmm.
bit of advice for me. I met some crucial people who were also starting out, like Lenny Kravitz. The connecting thread for me ultimately was storytelling
Mm-hmm.
through costume, through clothing, through kind of identity creating, if you
Mm-hmm.
will. Like, not
Yeah.
to overstate it, but like that's what we do in films. We create characters, and that's what we did. I did with so many great artists, Lenny and Madonna and Courtney Love, is
Mm.
not only are you helping them create kind of a vibe and an image and collaborating with them that
Mm-hmm.
is directly inspired by the music. So like working in print photography, I got to work in a tableau form, which
Yeah.
really helped me with balance and design.
Mm-hmm.
And then going into music videos, like from the album covers and everything, and live performances with artists. We do the videos that are narrative where they're actually playing characters in their own
True.
song.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course, the night before I was to work with Madonna for the first time was like, I just was a wreck. I didn't sleep at all. And all along my 20 plus years with Madonna, I had so many experiences like that, like how lucky I am and how excited I am. And I felt deserving. I didn't
Yeah.
feel like, but to be there on working with such creative people, like being in Paris with Madonna and going out to dinner with Jean-Paul Gaultier, just
Yeah.
stuff that was that I looked up to and never even dreamed that I would be in the same room. My first, second, and third Oscar nomination. I mean, there's just
Oh,
so
yeah.
many pinch me moments of
True.
like, I didn't plan on being here, and now that I'm here, I need to like feel it and own it, because the first inclination is I don't deserve this, or
Right.
like it's only luck.
And was your first big movie that you alluded to, I think just now, was it People versus Larry Finn? Was that the first big movie that you did the
I
costume
mean, it
for?
depends on what you mean by big. The break I got was doing The Crow, but I couldn't embrace that as a success because it was a tragedy. I did that movie because Brandon Lee invited me to. So the joy of it was completely demolished. So I did a small little film for HBO at that time with
Mm-hmm.
Christopher Guest, his remake of Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. And then
Yeah.
there's Tank Girl. And then
Yeah.
after Tank Girl was The People vs. Larry Flynn. I would say that was my first legitimate character-driven non-genre film. That was a seminal moment for me.
We first met when you were working on the Kingsman movies with Matthew Vaughn. I remember coming on set, and someone who hadn't been on a big movie set before, but having met you beforehand, the amount of extras, I mean, you had multiple costume trucks on that film. I mean, the team were, and you realize there's there's art here and there's logistics here, and not many
Yeah.
artists are good at both, but you have to be, don't you?
And I dare say Matthew Vaughn is unique in terms of logistics. I mean, he has a nimble quality of the way that he directs. So he directs these large budget films,
Mm.
but with the attitude and the nimbleness of an independent filmmaker. And I think the reason why he's such a brilliant filmmaker is he takes so many risks and he does kind of the unthinkable.
So a lot of the costumes that appear in movies, as you said, the film studios take, there is, though, an archive, isn't there, of iconic costumes?
Well, like Madonna has a really impressive archive, and I'm
Yeah.
sure people have seen the Celine Dion documentary. She
Yeah.
has an
Yes.
archive.
God, yeah, huge.
Yeah, and Madonna's is bigger,
Yeah.
bigger.
Wow.
So you have artists that have archived, they realize
Okay.
not only the kind of cultural value.
Mhm.
So you have personal archives, and then you have like the V&A or the Metropolitan Museum. They
Mm.
have costume archives where they
Mm.
have certain fashion or, sometimes film pieces that they
Okay.
feel are culturally relevant. A most recent
Mm.
archive is the Academy of Motion Picture Art and Sciences
Ah,
in a
okay.
museum
Good.
in Los Angeles, and the Academy Museum has started a really beautiful costume archive.
Oh, fantastic.
And I actually have donated bits and bobs that I have been allowed to keep
Mhm.
by producers on certain films. Or on Hedwig, I owned the part of my deal was I wanted to own all my costumes.
Oh,
So
brilliant.
I donated,
Mm.
they came to my house and kind of took pieces that,
You got the
so
cape?
I'm very happy
Yeah. Oh, good.
that they have those kind of, whether or not they ever on display, they're there and people can make appointments to
I
look
see.
at them.
Okay.
So that's thrilling.
There's been Tony Award nominations, BAFTA nominations, Academy Award nominations, and so many extraordinary iconic films. But let's jump to the two that are coming out this year.
Yeah. Yes.
And in fact, one of them is working with a director you worked before on Walk the Line, which is James Mangold, and that was such a brilliant film, the Johnny Cash biopic, which I
20
loved.
years ago.
Is that
20
already? Oh my God, that's so. And so you're working with him again on the Bob Dylan biopic.
This is my 6th film with Jim Mangold.
Is it really?
I
Wow.
haven't worked with him in 10 years.
Yeah.
He's a friend,
Yeah.
and I think he's a brilliant filmmaker. I adore him. And he asked me to design this film, A Complete Unknown, in 2019. We had quite a few
Okay.
delays. Yes, we had a lot of delays. Every film that I work on, it's a different entryway to the research.
Right.
So having done a couple biopics before, I started reading biographies about him in 2019.
Mm.
And also biographies of people and accounts of people in his circle, and doing that research and visual research. And like most biopics, and the challenge I had on Walk the Line is there are all kinds of performance images of him,
Mm-hmm.
but finding personal, the man behind
Oh,
the
I see.
stage,
True. Yeah.
personal reason. It's like being a detective. It's so much fun. I think more so than almost any film I've worked on, it's very succinct, the changes he went through from 61 to 63 to 65. They're very
Okay.
definitive.
All
So,
right. So
so
you've got to
that,
capture those nuances that lots of people might not notice, but you have to, I suppose. Another big film you did, a music biopic, which you mentioned, was Johnny Cash. I love Johnny Cash, and he was played by Joaquin Phoenix. And then Baba, your other big film this year is filming with Joaquin Phoenix again, and of course Lady Gaga in Folie, which is the new Joker movie. It was like you'd accidentally gone into a crazy person's head for a couple of hours and you came out again. You think, how did that happen? How on earth, as a costume designer, do you start a project like that?
I was the new kid on the block, and the first Joker was designed by Mark Bridges, a brilliant costume designer and a colleague of mine.
Right.
And I had the great good fortune to kind of build on what he had created.
True.
With
Yeah, for sure.
the director. Another one of those moments for me where it was really intimidating. The first day of talking to Joaquin, I think he came in and we measured him or something. And he's like, well, I guess we only work on movies with music, because it's 20 years, right? Or at that time, like 18 years since we'd worked together. And he warned me, he's like, I'm a lot tougher than I was on Walk the Line.
Or did he say that?
Yeah, in terms of materials that he's willing to wear, because he is
Ah,
very, he's vegan and
vegan.
he's
Yeah,
an animal rights activist.
yeah, true.
And, on Walk the Line, he was a little bit forgiving
Hmm.
about older leather shoes.
Yeah,
And
no
he
more.
warned me. I was like, don't worry about it, I got it. But, and then there's this other element of Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
And
So is it easier or harder working with someone who has a strong sense of style, clothes, and costume drama herself?
I mean, I have to say, it's probably going to be one of the highlights of collaborating with her, one of the highlights of my career.
No, really?
Is so generous, so committed, so willing, and so much fun. And she also had great ideas.
There's a radio show, a very important radio show called Desert Island Discs in the UK. Have you heard of it? And they
Well,
interview interesting people, and they're allowed to take one track and one of this to the desert island. If you could only take one of your movies you've made with you to watch on the desert island, which one would it be?
I don't know. That's impossible. I mean, depends what my
Impossible.
mood is in.
It's a
I'm
hard
very
one.
proud of WE, the movie
Ah, okay, that was
I directed.
beautiful.
I'm
Yeah.
very proud of that movie. Probably Folie and A Complete Unknown are probably the follow-ups. A Single Man, that's like
Ah, beautiful, beautiful
film that
costumes.
I
Yeah,
think is an important film.
sounds.
Girl Interrupted, like, I don't know.
All right, you need a big suitcase then. What's very important to you is being a big proponent of your industry and of costume designers and making sure they get the recognition that they deserve. And I love that you generously spend so much of your time doing that. For someone coming out of college today, wanting to be a costume designer, what's your one sentence of advice you could give them?
Well, if they're going into college, study art, all kinds of art, don't not just costume, literature, just feed yourself with
Mm-hmm.
all, whether it's literature, film, art, visual art, video art, whatever, and writing. So that's creative writing, that's what I would say to, don't even, study film in graduate school, but just
Mm-hmm.
like get a foundation. Say yes and be curious and
Very
take
good.
risks. And if you don't feel uncomfortable, you're probably not challenging yourself enough.
Brilliant. I think that's the best advice for any career that anyone wants to do. So I totally agree with that. Thank you. Thank you for your time and for that chat.